for you starting tomorrow night. At least the start of the series, J-Dog. Red Sox, Yankees tomorrow. Get things going early tomorrow night, and should be a fun series. We have all those games for you right here in the Pulse, right, Doc? Had them all season. Red Sox, Yankees, some postseason fun. J-Dog, before we get into some of the serious news talk of the day, beautiful, beautiful Monday. Keep the shorts out a little bit longer. Boycott the end of summer. Keep the shorts out a little bit longer. Got late temperatures in the upper 70s today. Beautiful day on a Monday to get you going. Makes things a little bit easier. Some tough news over the weekend nationally. We'll come back to that. J-Dog, a tie last night. Cowboys, Packer. 40-40. Wow, what a battle, huh? Yeah. Patriots getting it done. And the Patriots finally get a confidence builder at home against the Panthers. Beautiful afternoon. J-Dog, I don't really want to touch the Ryder Cup much, to be honest with you. I didn't watch it that much after the first day or two. I thought the fans in New York were fans in New York. I'll leave it at that. The Europeans did their thing, as I mentioned to you. U.S. has really the top players, or most of them, but, match play is a lot different than when Scotty Scheffler is out there by himself in his own zone trying to get a championship, or even Bryson. So... All right, we have a full show for you, so I want to get things started as we get going, and we'll start off with our poll question up on X. Daily poll question brought to you by Alpine Gold. For you buying your gold and silver, alpinegold.com. Our poll question up on X at the Pulse of an H. President Trump's going to be meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Things are heating up on trying to get a deal done in Gaza. That's our poll question up on X at the Pulse. Do you think the U.S. can help broker a peace deal in Gaza? The president says yes, they'll get it done. We will see. We will see. A couple storms also keeping an eye on. A tropical storm as well as a hurricane. Umberto heading out a little bit, but a tropical storm, Imelda, expected to become a hurricane by Tuesday. Now, what that could mean locally is maybe not much other than during the high tide, maybe some more water or whatever, but certain places like certainly Florida up to the Carolinas, in terms of rain bands, we will see, and any flooding that will be this week. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. We're adding signal strength for you over on the Seacoast, where we are. Mike Pomp just finishing up the Morning Information Center out of our Dover studios. WTSN 1270 AM, 98.1 FM, plus we've added 98.7 FM, HD2 in the Seacoast, if you like that, and the digital clarity. Lakes Region 107.3 FM, Laconia 1490 AM, 98.3 FM, HD2 as well in the Lakes, and 107.7 FM, Manchester, Concord, but worldwide. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of an H. Well, there's a couple of stories. I'm going to come back to the government shutdown. You heard Mike Pomp talking about the state of Maine preparing for a government shutdown in terms of federal jobs and other states. But really, we'll see if a deal gets done. There are some signs, but we'll check in with some of our political analysts and all-stars, that the Democrats may want to play ball to avert a government shutdown. We'll have more on that. What a way to run the federal government. Every 6 months, continue to spend more to avert a government shutdown. Imagine if you tried to run your business or your household like that, or your state, or your state. I really, it's hard to talk about what happened at that Michigan church and see the images, and it's also hard to talk about another situation in terms of another terrible story where someone took innocent people's life at that marina. But let's start with the church in Michigan. These are two examples, by the way, and it really does pain me. First of all, the victims, most of all, thoughts and prayers. And these are getting to be very, how do I say this? After a beautiful weekend, very tough stories to even talk about on a news talk point of view, but more violence. And again, a Marine identified in both cases. The Marine identified as the killer in that fatal Michigan church shooting and fire. And then, of course, there's another situation where a veteran, a Marine as well, who fought in Iraq, I believe, went in by boat in that marina. I believe it was in the Carolinas. I'll come back to it, and shot and killed some people. So I don't know what to say. I don't know if any of us do or does, because of, it's another example. And we've had too much lately. We really have. We've had too much. And what pains me is these are two Marines and veterans. And you can read individually about each. And they did their tours and all that. And we think of the veteran in Lewiston, Maine, not many years back, the largest mass casualty situation ever in the state of Maine, in Lewiston, Maine, Army veteran, and suffering from acute PTSD. And his family members were asking, crying out for the local police were aware. Apparently, the U.S. Army, no secret on his increasing PTSD. And all I can say is I talk a lot in this show about mental health, anxiety, stress, depression, suicide, but mental health. And I think the discussion obviously needs to expand. I don't know how we stop the next person that, for whatever reason, wants to hurt someone, whether it's in a church or a school or an event. It's just getting to be really, really, really overwhelming, I think. At least that's how I feel, let alone I can't imagine how the families and victims of lost loved ones. So we'll keep you posted on that, but our Fox News top and the bottom of the hour will pretty much we'll stay on that as well. And a couple of local stories. I guess the drought conditions, I mentioned that tropical storm Imelda that may turn into a hurricane by Tuesday. I guess the drought conditions are, even though we had that downpour on Thursday, still in effect in terms of outdoor campfires and stuff and burning. So we do have some drier weather, and we'll keep you posted as we get going. But beautiful day. By the way, I'm looking at some stories about particularly Rory McIlroy. I guess had some real back and forth with fans, and is it his current wife or his wife as well? They were maybe not treated that great at Bethpage. J-Dog, I was on the road a lot. I was busy on the weekend. And frankly, I have this policy, even if the Patriots are on at 1 o'clock against the Panthers. What a beautiful day yesterday down in Foxborough. What a gorgeous day today. I'll come back to that. But J-Dog, it's hard for me to sit inside on a beautiful day when it's just absolutely beautiful out, up near 80 in late September. It's hard for me. So I honestly did not watch a lot of the Ryder Cup, just seeing after the first day or two. Europeans almost put a mathematical lock on this thing, and it never really seemed to get off the ground in terms of that intense competition that you like to see in the final day between the pairings and the Europeans and the U.S. But hey, New York is New York. I'll just leave it at that in terms of fan behavior or lack of it. I'll just let it stand at that. New York, New York. We'll see where it goes. Speaking of beautiful weather today, up in North Sutton, New Hampshire, I have not been there. I mean, I've been there. What am I talking about? I've been there in a long time. I don't know if any of the players in the Ryder Cup yesterday are going to be up there. But there's a wonderful event happening for a buddy of mine who's turning 70. Wow, the big 7-0. Really one of my best buddies. And it's a wonderful course. J-Dog, have you been up to, I just got to get the exact golf. Is it the Golf Club of New Hampshire? But it's up in North Sutton. It's a beautiful course, and going to look forward to playing up there. And it's not a bad drive from here in our capital studio. So Shorty and a group, I don't know if any of the players from the Ryder Cup are going to be up there. Maybe they will be practicing. Maybe Keegan Bradley will be back home. It's not far from Vermont. Of course, he's a member over at Golf Club in New England in Stratham. And Keegan, I don't know, tough outing as the captain of the U.S. team at Bethpage in New York. Getting trounced by the Europeans, but so be it. But we'll keep an eye. I'm going to join this group this afternoon up there in North Sutton. Beautiful day for it. And Ryan Corkery will be on my bag. He'll be having my bag, carrying it for me. No, I'm kidding. But J-Dog, hope you had a good weekend. But hey, your Guardians, I forgot, J-Dog, your Guardians snuck in there on the. Wow. Wow. Good for you. Boy. Yeah. Now the Guardians, they got their clincher against the Tigers. Didn't the Red Sox? Wasn't it Detroit too? So Detroit helped both teams a year and go to the postseason. Oh. Oh, but Detroit helped both. My point is Detroit helped both the Red Sox and the Guardians, right? Yeah, yeah. Now, what, doubleheader tonight, Monday night? What do you have? Two games? Well, you know what I mean. Well, are they both the same time? Oh, oh, really? And who's on tonight? All right. Hey, Google. Hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. And by in the 11 o'clock hour, Andrew from Collette Travel is going to be in because a group of us were heading out west next week. Hard to believe it's almost here. The Badlands of Dakota, Yellowstone, and Jackson Hole. I wish Shorty was going with us, but I totally understand. I'll take good pictures and tell him of the filet mignon and the actually it'll be bison or elk and send it back to him. Hey, Alexa, Google play the Pulse on H. We come back. Deb Tangden's going to weigh in a little bit, talking about the economic side of things. Government shutdown on deck next. What a way to run our federal government. Who will blink? Can you believe this? I think one reason why no one's paid attention to this government shutdown, we've all become numb to it, right? I mean, every 6 months, can you imagine running your home? Can you imagine running your independent business? Can you imagine running your state? Every 6 months, we may have to shut the government down. Looming government shutdown. And a few years back when Democrats had the majority, like Chuck Schumer in the Senate, do you remember? I remember. I'm afflicted with this memory. Do you remember? I remember a couple of years ago whenever we did this every 6 months, Republicans in the Freedom Caucus a few years ago didn't want to agree to a continuing resolution that's Washington gobbledygook for more spending to keep the government open. They didn't want to agree to it. So Democrats would say to the Republican Freedom Caucus folks worried about the debt, you can't default on our obligations and allow the federal government to shut down. You can't allow this to happen. Social, the benefits, the checks, the veteran, no one will get paid. Federal government workers, you can't allow the government to shut down. Now that the Democrats are in the minority, Chuck Schumer's been hoping the government will shut down so we can blame Republicans. We'll see if someone's going to blink to avert the government shutdown and attempts to bring some peace to the Middle East. Back in a moment. I don't know if you even paid attention. There's so much going on in the last week or so, but Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, actually spoke at the United Nations as the president had done a few, last week, beginning of the week more. But during his UN address, the Israeli Prime Minister said he rejected international calls to end the war in Gaza, saying that Israel has to preserve and survive and can't agree to something, recognizing they're trying to figure it out. But after saying that today, Netanyahu is where? He's at the White House meeting with President Donald Trump. The two leaders are going to meet today, trying to hammer out something that would bring peace to Gaza and the whole situation. And I think people should be hoping that happens. But Israel's been facing more isolation, as you know, from certain countries like France and others that are wrecking more, looking at Palestine as a state. So the White House, the president getting impatient, and that's also true in the Ukraine, changing his thoughts towards the Russians and Putin. And so we'll see. But that's today. We'll have more on that from our national contributors in terms of the White House meeting between President Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister. After what happened this weekend, and again, the church in Michigan and what we've seen, you think about local, because what I was thinking, it's just sad, no matter the reason, the motive, obviously I'm just going to say this, someone who does something reaches a point, whether it's because they're angry over politics or angry over something else, and obviously mental health has to play some degree of this. I don't know many sane people that decide to plan and plot and then go hurt a bunch of people because they're upset about something. But it is what it is, and it's terrible. The violence needs to stop. It really does. But locally, I was thinking about this. If you look at the places and how random it is, how do you stop something? You could be out in a restaurant. You could be like this situation, another situation at that marina. You could be in church. And you think of churches because those are set masses or services in time. So on a Sunday morning, you think of like in what happened over the weekend in Michigan at that church, but you think of a church service, a synagogue service. Those are usually punctual. There's a certain time, and someone who's nuts knows there's a bunch of people, and you wonder if there's not going to be increased security. And how sad is that you have to think about security outside for a church service? But I thought of that a few weeks ago, actually. I hadn't been to church in a little bit too long. As I say to my smarter, prettier, better half, I know she's better at it than me. And I actually bumped into the father of the church, Catholic church that we attend, and I had seen him grocery shopping about a month earlier. I hadn't been much. I asked him if I could help grocery shopping, if that would count for my missing church sometimes. He said, no, but you can walk with me in the store at Hannaford. Anyway, he's a great guy, Father Gary. But my point is, I was thinking at that church services, because I'm kind of oriented that way, situational awareness, and what would happen if one individual, because that's what we see in these cases, does something. What do you do? And so many times people's reaction is one which is natural shock and fear, and no one really does much until something's done. And what do you do? And there's an article, WMUR has it, and others, that you're going to start to see. You're going to start to see local schools. I think it was J-Dog, the Concord superintendent. I think I saw something in Concord talking about more security, local churches, safety measures. And maybe we'll get back to, I don't want to get into this, but it goes back to a couple of the crazy years, a few years back when people didn't want a school resource officer or police officer inside a school until you need them there, right? Until you need them there, and you need them there. So local churches and schools looking at security is it's a sad reality of reality, because you don't know. And you know what you don't know is you can't escape it, because you don't know. You could be living in a very rural area or a very urban area. And sometimes people feel safe in a major city, and then you could live in the middle of nowhere and someone can do something. And, I don't know if people remember. I do. It was so many years ago, I can hardly remember. But J-Dog, you remember in the North Country, was it Carl Draga, way up north, and killed a couple state troopers before he was a local resident when went up to Colebrook in the newspaper, and John Harrigan's newspaper, and a judge, and just kind of went nuts. And I believe I think he killed at least one or two state troopers, right, J Dog? At least one I know, and maybe two. It was a terrible scene, terrible situation. That was how many, you think of this, of course, everything now with AI, but I'm just going to say Carl Draga, Northern New Hampshire shootings. And you think of how long ago that was. And J Dog, it was well, I'm trying to see what years, 20, I think it was like 25 years ago. Is that right? Killed four, 20, no, 20, yeah. Killed four in Colebrook, New Hampshire. And that was a long, long time ago. This guy, I remember when it happened, two state troopers and a judge and a newspaper editor. John Harrigan's paper up in Colebrook killed in that rampage. Yeah, you said that many years ago. You're right, J Dog. August 19th, 1997. And he lived up there. I just remember he was just this, I don't know, outcast, recluse, obviously nuts. And he went on a rampage. He'd been pulled over at a parking lot in an IGA and store, and it went on. And terrible story. He actually, I think he stole the state trooper's cruiser. Then he went to I think the judge's office, and then the Colebrook News and Sentinel was the newspaper. And he came in and that was a long time ago. And these things, I mean, just look at the last few weeks. It's to this point now where the political stuff, the political anger, the political violence, the political assassination of Charlie Kirk, the suspect, and then you wind it forward to even in New Hampshire at the Sky Meadow Country Club in Nashua. What a terrible story that was. This guy goes in, apparently a former employee. I mean, just crazy stuff. Just starts shooting up the place, kills that wonderful husband and father. And I think his daughter is getting married in a month, and he protecting his family. He gets killed. People get wounded. This is a Sky Meadow Country Club in Nashua, New Hampshire. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And then, of course, what happened in Michigan and over the weekend. So just sad stuff. It's just, just hope and pray to God that it slows down and stops. And you don't know how many more folks are out there that are on that edge for whatever reason. And what do you do to protect yourself? You can't. I mean, it's almost impossible to safeguard in terms of the next person who's a ticking time bomb. But it's just more debate on this. It's inevitable we have to talk about it. You can't ignore it, but it's something you also don't want to talk about or think about. All right, some commentary, 603-228-2080. Hey, Alexa, Google, play the Pulse of an H. Jack Keith, J-Dog on the boards, and a beautiful, beautiful Monday weather-wise. And Anna Brown, Citizens Count, on deck next. I was just thinking, I would go to Anna Brown, Citizens Count. The irony of Rory McIlroy getting the brunt of some of the New Yorkers and talking about how unimpressed he was with, golf should be to a higher standard, teaching you politeness and etiquette on the course. But the fans are the fans in New York. The irony of Rory is probably the most pro-American member of the European team in the Ryder Cup. He loves America, and people love him here. He's one of the best, and it's just ironic he got the brunt of it. But anyway, New York, right? Anna Brown, Citizens Count, citizenscount.org. Wonderful bipartisan, nonpartisan resource. And with all the national stuff, Anna Brown, I want to get an update. State Senator Dan Innes last week on my show, out of the race. Scott Brown on my show, very much in the race, hanging in there despite the expected entrance of John E. Sununu in that U.S. Senate matchup. And Chris Pappas and has a challenger, but that race is certainly one of the top spots. And the interesting race, Ann, is the governor's race, other than Kelly Ayotte running again for re-election and one former independent, I guess, Democrat candidate. In terms of major statewide known Democrats, like a state senator or someone who's run before, still no big names jumping into that race. But take it away, Anna. Well, right. Interesting analysis, Anna Brown, Citizens Count. I could see in a general election, hypothetically, in a general election, if it were, and I'm saying hypothetically, it's a big if because Kevin Landrigan was on my show Friday as a regular contributor. He's really the dean of the New Hampshire Press Corps. He's seen more of this stuff over the decades, and he thinks that people who think that John E. Sununu is gonna clobber Scott Brown in a primary have it wrong. He thinks it's gonna be a tough battle, but let's assume for a moment it is Sununu and Chris Pappas. Let's assume that in the general. You would think that that may help Sununu a little bit because even if he gets a Trump nod or endorsement, he's been highly critical in the past, the last few cycles of President Donald Trump. John E. Sununu has been very critical of him. And yet in the primary, Republican primary, I would think that the Trump endorsement for either a Brown or John E. Sununu, once he jumps into this thing, which I presume will be in the next few weeks, is very important in the primary. The Trump factor in the primary, I think, is very important for one of those two. I may be wrong. What do you think? Mm-hmm. It's interesting. On Friday, no, I'm sorry, was it Thursday? I had Scott Brown on. I was pressing him because I think it was just a few days. I think it's this week they're going to have a financial reporting. And I asked him, I'm not saying it's one of the worst parts of politics is raising money, but it's a reality. How much you're going to raise? You're going to raise enough. And he was saying he wouldn't tell me. He said, "Nice try, Jack, but you're going to have to wait and see." I would think that John E. Sununu, once he jumps into this thing, will have a pretty good path, like Republican senatorial, RNC, and I do think, I may be wrong, but I think the Trump team is going to look at this Senate race, looking at how tight these, the control of Congress in a midterm. They're going to want to pick the best person they think can win, even if they have to kind of hold their nose a little bit based on past criticism. I think they're going to look at who can raise the most money, who has the best chances against Chris Pappas in a general between, if it is Brown and Sununu, who has the best chances. I think that's what they're going to look at. They're going to, Trump likes to pick winners, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think we talked about the governor's race? You mentioned the J. Ruway Manchester mayoral race. It was, I think, the closing of the day of the filing period when a Democrat school board member jumped in Manchester, and that's coming right up next month. But do you think in the governor's race here, it's going to stay this independent candidate? Last name is Kuiper. I'll get him on the show sometime soon. He's now a Democrat. He's running as a Democrat. Do you think it's going to stay, or do you think between now and the holidays, a well-known statewide Democrat will jump into the race for governor? Well, yeah. Well, I don't know elections like you do in terms of ballots and how it works in terms of strategy, but you don't, Donald Trump indirectly will be on the ballot, but he's not. So you have Ayotte running as a Republican for governor in re-election, probably the top Republican name. The only U.S. Senate race other than the two congressional races where you have challengers to Maggie Goodlander, for example, and Chris Pappas is giving up the seat. So Pappas would probably be the top Democrat name. Ayotte for Republicans, the top Republican name. Now, John E. Sununu, the last name, people are going to recognize that in the Senate primary, but you'd think of the Democrats would want a fairly well-known name on the Democrat side running for governor to at least make it competitive, but also down ballot because, you got to look at these state house races, state Senate, it's a down ballot thing, right? Right. Well, it surprises me because if you're a somewhat known Democrat, but not as statewide known, but you're thinking down the road, not this next year, but say down the road, and you've seen this. Sometimes you can run, a win's a long shot, but you run a good, respectful, smart campaign, and people get impressed by you if you can do that. And it is kind of a, I don't want to say a free opportunity, but it is an opportunity for some state, like a state senator who's not well known as a Democrat to run for governor and run a respectful race to kind of get that statewide name recognition for a future race, is it not? Mm-hmm. Right, right. And of course, Maggie Hassan had been governor a few terms before the Senate. All right, thank you, Anna Brown. Enjoy the weather on this Monday. Citizens Count, citizenscount.org. Thank you, Anna. Keeping an eye on Mother Nature this week. Not as much here. Beautiful weather today, but that tropical storm Imelda expected to become a hurricane by tomorrow. We'll see if that's a coastal thing down in the Carolinas or down to Florida. You never know, or Georgia on the coast. Hey, Alexa. Hey, Google. Play the Pulse of an H. Doug Tengden taking a look at the markets. Are the interest rates coming down a little bit for consumer lending? Yes or no? Where are we at on employment? Doug Tengden on deck next. All right, so J Dog's happy. Red Sox fans are happy. J Dog's more happy that his Cleveland Guardians snuck in this thing. Red Sox, Yankees kick it off, believe it or not, right away. No rest for the weary. I guess that wild card matchup tomorrow night. Red Sox. We'll have that game for you on the Pulse. I don't know what time first pitch is, J Dog, but yeah, all right. Yep. Doug Tengden, worldmarketadvisors.com, worldmarketadvisors.com, checking in. And the we're getting that time of year, Doug. Good morning. By the way, good morning. Hope you had a good weekend, Doug. Really? Where you going? Where are you going after? Some brook trout? Where are you going to? What? Oh, wow. Beautiful. I actually know the area you're talking about. Yeah. It's, I, well, you're, now there's a couple, the Zealand Trail, there's a couple loops or hikes. One's rather arduous, actually, pretty tough. And then there's another way to get in there, but it's kind of tucked in there, right? Yeah. Well, the weather. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, isn't that? Yeah, that's that's a blessing. That's a blessing. That's a blessing. You'll take that one with you. Yeah, the colors, the stripes. You'll take that. You'll take that memory with you. Hey, Doug, I'm on the economy. I mean, interest rates are one thing. The Fed rates coming down eventually here. I'm really looking at this employment picture as an emerging area of interest in terms of trying to gauge where the economy's going. Maybe talk about that a little bit. Interesting. Yeah, and we'll see. My barometer is less official than yours and other economists, Doug Tengden, World Market Advisors. I always thought a good test of an economy, and I saw this in New Hampshire on a couple of the ups and downturns, is if you or your partner lose a good job, how quickly does it take you not to get another job, but a job that pays the same level of the one you lost? Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. What else is catching your eye? Interesting. Doug Tengden, World Market Advisors. Keep when you go to bed at night, keep dreaming about that the water boiling up there and those Zealand beaver dams for those brookies. Yes, they are. Yeah. All right. Hey Google, hey Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. I noticed the Michael Graham, who will be coming up in the 10 o'clock hour, JDog 1020 New Hampshire Journal, said the Democrats just put out I guess, an ad online. Stop John Sununu. Graham has this stop John Sununu. The Democrats put out John Sununu will work for corporations and special interests, not for granted staters. So it's funny to tell you what a threat they're worried about him running in the Senate. They already have some stuff coming out before he even makes it official, which I think will be in the next few weeks. John Sununu has made millions, the Democrat ad says, selling out to corporations and working for Wall Street, Big Pharma, and Big Oil, not for the people in New Hampshire. So kind of some of the words that Scott Brown was echoing on my show the other day, the Republican in that primary. And I asked him to clarify, and he was talking about some of the bank stuff. And I think I'm pretty sure when John E. Sununu was in the Senate, I think he was on the Senate Banking or Finance Committee. So that's what they do. That's what they do in Washington, right? It's not the first, won't be the last. A lot of times folks who serve there end up lobbying and representing interest. I mean, Chris Sununu, former governor, 4-term governor here. Chris Sununu, just recently the recent governor, also guest host of this show and regular contributor. You remember when he announced on my show on that morning of that beginning of the week that set off the whole thing, that after meeting with President Trump, Chris Sununu was not running for the Senate. When I asked him point blank on my show, that news was made here first. He said he was going to, I think the first story was he was going to work with a college friend who had started kind of an investment banking firm. And then he was going to not do one thing, kind of do a couple of things as he was figuring out the professional space after 4 years of being 4 terms. 8 years of being governor. He said he had to go out and make some real money, as you know, he had said, and that's true. And then he takes basically the executive director position of the U.S. airline lobbying group in Washington. I don't know what it's called, but basically, the Southwest, the Delta, all the airlines, I think even FedEx, they have their own lobbying arm in Washington. And Sununu, former Governor Chris Sununu, is now the executive director or head of that. It's like a $3 million a year job, a full-time job representing the U.S. airline industry in terms of matters before Congress, if you will. John E. Sununu had done a fair amount of, I guess you quote unquote, lobbying for different corporate interests after he had been in Congress. And that's what, former Congressman Frank Ginta, and I think he's been doing that. Brad Card, regular contributor on my show here. And of course, he's has his own firm doing that in D.C., co-host of Contact Politics. So that's what they do, many of them. And that's Washington, and Donald Trump, of course, changing that environment quite a bit, sort of running against the establishment, but still, it's who you know. It's who you know, and setting up meetings, introducing, networking in D.C. Hey, Alexei, Google Play the Pulse of Edge, keeping an eye on some of these storms that are out in the Atlantic, but not here, but could have an impact. Not here really this week, but maybe the Carolinas. We'll tell you more about that tropical storm Imelda as we get into the show. Grief coming out of Michigan after that attack at the church, and sad stuff. And also looming government shutdown, how to avoid that. And President Trump meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister today, trying to get a meaningful peace deal in Gaza. Good Morning New Hampshire continues right after this.